This is Allan Saxe talking with Mayor Harold Patterson, and it's January the 2nd, 1996. Mayor Patterson, if you could maybe just introduce yourself and who you are and when you were mayor of Arlington.
Okay. I'm Harold E. Patterson, live at 2706 Marquis Circle, Arlington, Texas. I became mayor in '83. Left the office in 1987.
So you were a two-term mayor.
That's correct.
Of Arlington. Mayor from 1983 to 1987. And when did you come to Arlington? Were you born in Arlington?
I was born in Arlington on the intersection of 360 and Arkansas Lane, southeast corner, 1929.
At 360 in Arkansas Lane?
That's correct.
Which is now a major place. And you did not live in Arlington all of your life, though. You worked, or you did live in Arlington all of your life.
I've lived in Arlington all my life.
All your life, but you worked in different communities, or not?
I started my employment First National Bank in Grand Prairie. Came out of the Marine Corps and went to work for the First National Bank in Grand Prairie, and I stayed with them from 1950 to 52. At that time, I came to the First National Bank in Arlington.
To the First National. So you worked at the First National Bank in Grand Prairie in the 1950s, probably.
Well, I sort of anticipated your question.
Oh, good. Excellent. This will help a lot. I appreciate it. That's wonderful. And this is Arlington. It starts...
Yes. I started here at Arlington, but prior to coming to Arlington, I was with the First National Bank in Grand Prairie.
In Grand Prairie. And so this is... I should really say Grand Prairie, I guess.
No. I should say Arlington.
Arlington, that's okay.
Well, let me see. Yes, that should say Grand Prairie.
Grand Prairie, good.
Right.
Okay. Grand Prairie. I appreciate it. That's great. And when did you take an interest in politics? When did you finally decide that you were interested in Arlington city politics? Was there a particular moment or reason why? Or
well, yes. In 1996, I was president of Arlington National Bank at that time, and I was in the process of building a new building, getting zoning, and had gotten the zoning, had started the major building, and one morning I looked up in the old building, and Tom Vandergriff and all the city council came walking in, and I thought they was fixing to revoke my charter, or my zoning, my building permit. Everything went through my mind, and my secretary took them back to the coffee room and got them coffee and coke, whatever they wanted. And whenever I got back there, of course, Tom and I went to high school together, and I said, "Tom, what's the matter?" And he said, "You have played the devil." And I said, "What's the matter, Tom?" He started laughing. He said, "No, we want you to run for city council." And so, of course, that was something that I really...
And this was what day? This was
1966.
1966.
Mm-hmm. And so, Buck Buchanan was getting ready to retire at that time, and so they wanted me to run for his position, which I agreed to do. And, of course, won the election and then ran 9 other times after that.
So it was an open position
Yes.
that you ran in. And,
Yes.
and his name was...
M.D. Buck Buchanan.
M.D.
Buck
just the
Buchanan.
initials, M.D. Buck, was his nickname.
Nickname.
Buchanan. And he was retiring.
Well, he was getting out of politics.
He was getting out of politics. And so you ran for the council. Was there any opposition in that time? Or
yes,
there was some opposition?
At that time, and I'm trying to recall, Freeland was his last name. I do not recall his first name.
But it was pretty minor opposition. It wasn't major opposition.
Mr. Freeland was a good man. He still is. I think he's still living. He worked for Sears at that time. He was a good individual and ran a good race, but we, of course, secured sufficient votes to go into the chair.
And then you ran 9 times after that?
Yes.
For the council, or does that
No.
include mayor, as council and mayor?
No, I ran 2 times for mayor and
7 times?
8 times
8 times for the council?
for the council.
So you really ran 8 times for
Council position. And
2 terms for mayor.
2 terms for mayor. Serving 20 years.
And so from 1966 to 1986,
I was a council person.
or from 1966 to 1986 you're on the council, and then from
No, 1984.
and then from 83 to 87 you were
Yeah,
mayor.
right. I was mayor for 83, 84, 85,
and all this was
86.
consecutive terms. I mean, you just
No.
went straight on. or not?
No, in fact, the business, like I say, I've anticipated
good,
this, and I'm going to give
that's
you this,
great.
and that
Thank you.
will tell you,
Good.
basically,
It'll be good.
I stepped down from the council position in 82, and Mayor Stovall then, and I sat out 1 year. Then Mayor Stovall decided he would not seek re-election, and so I decided to step back into politics and ran for the mayorship.
Then ran for mayor after Mayor Stovall stepped down.
After he decided to step down, of course, I was not going to run against the mayor, Mayor Stovall, because he was a good one. And so, but once he announced the fact that he would not run again, then I decided to come back and run.
And when you first got on the council in 1966, what were the major issues in the town at that particular time?
Allan, I think probably what I considered one of the major issues was the fact that old downtown Arlington had depreciated down to the fact that it was not giving the city any tax base. And I know the mayor and council in those years, 67, 68, we spent a lot of time talking and trying to work up sufficient courage to condemn old downtown Arlington and put the city hall and the library where they are today.
And this was in the 60s.
Yes, middle 60s. And, well, it was after I went on the council. I went on the council 66, and this was probably happening was in the middle 67, 68.
So downtown Arlington was already starting to deteriorate at that time.
Well, it had deteriorated quite a bit down to the point of where it was attracting what we consider undesirable businesses. And so that gave us the incentive to go ahead and condemn old downtown Arlington. And, you know, the one thing that I mentioned to Mayor Green, and I hope it, and then he has continued it, but the one thing we did back there, Allan, was that we hired 3, not MAI appraisers, but 3 brokers, local brokers that knew those people that owned those buildings down there. And we asked those brokers to go in and appraise those properties. And we did not average those 3 appraisals. We took the highest of the 3 in each case. And then we added 5% to that to make for sure that we were taking these people's properties and that we gave them the ultimate maximum amount of market value for their property. And so I hope that continues whenever Arlington, or any other entity for that matter, that has the power of condemnation, they will use that approach to make for sure that if we take something from one of our taxpayers and citizens, that we give them true market value.
So how many properties were taken, approximately?
I would have to guess. I'm sure the City Hall, Allan, would have those numbers, but I would say there had to be as many as 50 properties.
Now, was this is this where the city hall now sits and the library on some of those properties?
Mm-hmm.
Is that what it
You got just a minute? Let me
Sure,
show
okay.
you something. Step out here.
I'll shut this real quick. So these buildings, so that was there any controversy on the council on taking those buildings? Did it?
No, there was none on the council. Of course, the people that, once they found out that we were going to condemn their buildings, became pretty excited. And, in fact, I had one gentleman, of course, been born and raised here in Arlington, that made the statement to me that he said, son, he said, if your father was still living, he'd turn over in his grave. You know, y'all doing these things, because the old timers used to drive well, as a kid, I used to drive a mule and team loaded with cotton or corn, and of course we had a gin right where the First Baptist Church is now. We had another gin down where the post office is now. It was the Hugh Smith's gin. The co-op gin is where the First Baptist Church, and so you know, the old timers would drive their mules and teams into the gins, and then they'd go down to the old water well, mineral well, and sit around and talk about crops and animals and things of that nature, what they was going to do the next planting, things of this type. And so, you know, the old timers, and it was hard for me to do that, as well as Tommy and some of the others on there, but you know, we felt and knew that the tax base was gone. As you can see the buildings from the picture I showed you, the tax base was gone. It was the buildings was having to drop their rent or lease money.
And there was a need for a new city hall anyway at some point.
There was a need for a new city hall, a need for a new library. And so, like I said, we made sure that we paid those people fair market value or more for their buildings and land, and made the decision and did it.
And what else aside from that, as we go out of the 60s, in the 60s, were there any other controversial issues before the council that you remember, aside from the taking of the discount?
You know, that was the time the JCs, I think, was wanting to put fluoride in the water, and people didn't want that, and there was quite a bit of an issue going back and forth. That's been so long ago, I don't remember all of the participants, but I do know that it took several years before we finally decided to go ahead and put fluoride in the water.
That was a big issue in a lot of communities. Now it almost seems funny, but at that time it was a really polarizing issue, was fluoridation of water.
Yeah, it really was, and of course everybody talked about us forcing them to do something that they didn't want to do in their constitutional rights and things of that nature. But, you know, it finally settled down. And like I say, the people in Arlington have been real good and progressive, and they have elected on their own to support all the bond issues, and they've been real aggressive, real positive, you know. So
Arlington really began to take off in the 60s and 70s. And I've been trying to compare Arlington to other communities on what has allowed Arlington to prosper and other communities perhaps not so much. And without necessarily mentioning any names, what were the factors that you think would compare Arlington to some of the surrounding communities that allowed Arlington to probably prosper, that other communities were perhaps a little bit more stagnant, like Grand Prairie at that time?
Yeah. Well, I think, Allan, unity, teamwork, whether it's on a football team, baseball team, I think a community working together, and I'm talking about their churches, I'm talking about their politicians, I'm talking about their business community, working together for the betterment of the community as a whole and not for their separate deals. But I think our leadership, political leadership, played a major part, as well as our others. But politically, our leadership was making for sure that we all work together for the best interest of the community as a whole, and bringing in the churches, like I said a while ago. Arlington just never has been a divisive community. Of course, we've had our problems with single-member districts. I, for one, didn't vote for it, didn't work for it, don't like it as of today. But, you know, I'm willing to work with those districts and try to make sure that we all work together to keep making Arlington a better town, a better community to serve the taxpayers.
Did you feel that other communities were perhaps more divisive than Arlington in its politics or its business community? Or
yes, I feel like that, you know, just reading the paper, the Fort Worth Star-Telegram, Dallas Morning News, about the communities in Dallas County or Tarrant County, I think that you didn't get a lot of negative publicity in Arlington than the other communities got.
So Arlington just didn't have the negative publicity that it
No, and again, I contribute that to our leadership, political leadership. Of course, you should not mention names, but it's hard for me not to mention Tom Vandegrift, because if you check the records back and whenever he came in and started to set the tone of the community, a positive community, we can do it. And that was his thought constantly. Yes, we can do it. We can pass a bond issue to do this, or whatever had to be done. And so I think that leadership, you know, positive leadership means a whole lot to the community.
And when they asked you to run for the council, literally the whole council and mayor came to see you as a group.
That's correct.
That's interesting. And you agreed to serve at that time?
Yes, I did.
Right at that moment. Okay. And as we go into the 1970s, that was a pretty tumultuous period in Arlington politics. If I remember, there were some very tough elections that went on at that time. Do you have any idea why in the 70s things really began to bubble a little bit in Arlington politics? Was there any particular reason why? And I can even mention, I guess the elections that come to mind were between Ralph Shelton and Paul Yarborough. It was a pretty intense election in the 1970s. Was there?
Well, I think probably that kicked off, you know, a strong run at that. But both Ralph Shelton and Paul Yarborough were tremendous people. And although Ralph Shelton won, Paul Yarborough would have made just as good a council person. And but it was one of those cases where two good people wanted to serve their community at the same time. So it forced them, you know, to run against each other.
Why was it so intense? That was one of the toughest elections that Arlington's ever seen, it seems like. But
well, of course, it's like any other political race, Alan. When you get your people, your old timers, and that's made friends over 100 years, or their families have made friends over 100 years. You get those people involved, and then you know, they get their friends and whatever. And anytime you run for political office, you have to have the endorsements and the help of people that lived in the community for a long time and built up a lot of friends and backing supporters, you know. And that was true in Ralph Shelton's and Paul Yarborough's case. Both families were highly regarded and still are, you know. And so when you get two people of that stature, you know, running, you're going to have a lot of people voicing their opinion, and sometimes they say things maybe that they don't really mean.
There were three big council races in the 70s, that at least that people have told me about in the past. One was they were pretty intense. One was the Ralph Shelton Paul Yarborough race. The other was Barton Thompson and Martha Walker. I think the very same year, if I'm not mistaken. Or pretty close, where Barton Thompson ran against Martha Walker, and that was a tough race.
Yes, it was a tough race, and of course Martha won that race.
Yeah.
And there again, it brought into play old families versus each other. The Thompson family has been here for years and years and years, and then Martha's supporters we're old family, and of course, Martha is a lady, and as I've said, even before Martha got there, sooner or later, and you'll still see that women are stepping into the political arena because more women vote than men, and I think it was time for women to step forward, and Martha,
And she was the first woman on the council.
Yes.
She was the first one. And then the other race was my race, which was against Carolyn Snyder, which was a pretty tough race too.
Yeah, right. And there again, Allan, and Carolyn Snyder was a tremendous person, such as yourself, as much as you've done. But again, and not being disrespectful to you as an individual,
she was terrific.
But you're a male.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, I don't want to run against a female.
It's difficult, especially like
if they're good.
If they're good, that's right.
If
they're really good, it's
and Martha's really good. Carolyn Snyder, you're not going to beat Dottie Lynn.
That's right.
Richard beat Dottie, but it's.
But it was hard. It's hard to beat them sometimes.
Yeah.
But that's true.
It's right now a good woman. It's like a Carolyn Snyder or Martha Walker. I don't want to run against them.
As you look back, and you were on the council for a long time, what were the most troubling periods as either a council member or as mayor, where it was something that, I guess I'm using the word troubling, but things that were disturbing or controversial or defining, as a particular moment in the city's history?
Well, Allan, in fact, I anticipated your question.
As that also, but.
And the one thing that disturbed me back then, one of the major things during my mayorship, was transfer of water and sewer money into the general fund. And I'll give you some instruments. Won't take time to read those, but I'll give you some instruments and papers that will tell you.
And this is when you were mayor, too?
Yes. Because while I was
water and sewer money.
Yes, being transferred over into the general fund, and it still is a problem. And as you will see in here, these papers never I get pass them on to you. And I would encourage you, Allan, and to read this instrument about water and sewer funds, because in all due respects to the council members right now, today, I dare say that they have not read them because they leave it up to the staff to interpret those.
Why did they begin to transfer water and do you remember the year when that was?
Well, I believe it was 85 that they started, and of course I was mayor at that time, and I fought it. The transfer of
so
water.
The council could have stopped it, of course, if they wanted
to. The council could have stopped it.
But they didn't.
But they didn't. Well, they did while I was mayor.
They did stop it when you were mayor.
I stopped it.
So the staff wanted that to happen.
Yes.
But the council just stopped it.
Yes, and I've got articles out of the papers here, Allan, that will define those points. And if you'll read the instrument itself, and I've underscored and outlined like this. What this simply says that you will not use those monies for any other purpose rather than to service the water and sewer bonds, to improve the water and sewer system.
Why did they want to do that? To make up deficits in the general fund?
Well, and the newspaper articles in here written by O.K. Carter and different ones bring that out very strongly. For some reason, and I've never understood this, Allan, is the fact that people get excited if you talk about taxes. If you're going to raise my taxes, don't do it. Now then, they get your water bill at the end of the month, they pay it. Say, well, my water went up this month. They don't say why. Did they increase the water rates or whatever? And so, like I say, while I was fighting this thing, and I've got clippings from papers, Alan, that will help you whenever you get ready to do your writing, the many reasons that you shouldn't raise your water and transfer it out. And I'm going to challenge you here in just a few minutes for this. You want to bring in outsiders, but by the same token, those people that come in here and buy raw land, they didn't have water and sewer, but when you and I are paying our water and sewer bill, we take that water and sewer line out there at our cost to their property. Then it goes from $1,000 an acre to $20,000 an acre, because you and I, with our water and sewer money, we took those water and sewer lines out to that property. Now, they'll argue, well, they bring up the tax base. And that's true, but not to the extent of the water and sewer. The water and sewer money that you and I pay is defined in this instrument to really maintain our water and sewer systems, to extend it, to improve it.
And to extend it. I mean, that's where the
to
money
extend
comes
it
from, right?
and to improve it. But it definitely says not to be used for any other reason.
When did the council decide to follow the staff recommendations and allow the transfer?
Well, and that's also in the paper here, but and Mayor Green made the statement there when he was confronted that he could understand why those of us were against it. He could sympathize with us and understand our position, and he could go either way. And I think that is quoted here in the paper.
So it was under the Queen administration where the money began to be shifted to the operating fund.
Yes, that's correct.
And the council voted for it. So.
Yes, that's correct.
How much can they shift over? I know that's probably in the article, but I'm just curious.
How much can they?
Can they shift over? Oh, I mean, how much do they shift over? Right?
Well, whenever I was opposing, I opposed it even after I stepped down from the mayorship. And the mayor told me that if I would, and that's also in the paper here, if I would quit speaking out against it, that they wouldn't do it anymore. But it's still being done more and more every year.
Is there any limit on how much they can take out?
0 is the limit.
Is what they should.
But I think if you really get down to the nitty-gritty of it, and like some of the statements, Alan, and you'll enjoy this, that was the reason it was transferring that is because UTA didn't pay any taxes, and the school system didn't pay any taxes, so by raising the water rates, force them. Well, forces UTA and pardon me just a second.
I remember when this was, so if the staff comes in and says, we would like $1 million out of water and sewer, they can pull it out now.
Sure, the mayor and council approved it.
As long as the mayor and council can pull it out.
Yeah, and at one time they pulled $10 million out of it.
Because water and sewer makes money. It brings in the money.
Yeah. See, and they can raise the water and sewer rates, and you and I will not say one word. But if they raise their taxes now, see, they'll get it. But, Arlington is not by themselves. A lot of other cities do the same thing. That don't make it right. And if they'll read their instruments that they're sworn to uphold, you could just read that right in there.
And this is state law. Is it state law?
This is federal.
Federal law. I didn't know that. That's interesting.
Well, I'm going to give you a copy
I like
of
that.
the whole thing here.
That's federal law.
Well, let's see. I say it's, I believe it's federal. But I wouldn't swear whether it's state or federal. But I think it's federal because that's dealing with your taxes and water and sewer rates, and so because you have to transfer that water and sewer into your general fund, that's helping your ad valorem taxes, of course.
Aside from this issue, were there any other issues that concerned you as mayor or as a council member?
Yes, in fact, some of it's still going on. In fact, I've also given you a copy here. I think as we put new council people on, see, one advantage I think Arlington has had over the years, we've had the mayor, Vandergrift, that served 26 years. We had the Carolyn Snyders and the Martha Walkers and the Willard Suttons and the Wick Alexanders that served 8, 10, 12 years. I served 20. S.J. Stovall served 20. And we've seen a lot of things happen, and I think it got to have a large turnover of council people. I think we certainly, of course, Mayor Green has been there for a long time, and Paul Hightower's been there for several, Audrey Lynn's been there for several years, but we've got some newer council people on there, and they're good ones, but still, and no disrespect meant to them, whether you're bankers or lawyers or what, it takes maturity and some experience in order to know, what to do.
What other issues? Those are important issues. Downzoning, the transfer of money to the general fund from water and sewer. Were there any other issues of that caliber that came up?
Of course, increasing our funding for our streets and thoroughfares, and I know this was a fairly good argument between Mr. Bruner, whenever he ran against me for the mayorship, and myself. You can argue everything in the world, Alan. What's good, what's bad. Infrastructure, to me, is a very, very important thing. You must have water, sewer, you must have streets, you must have the ability to move these people through your city and around your city if you're going to entice them to come into your city. So, if you go out there and start enticing all these people to come in and you don't take care of the infrastructure, streets, water, sewer, municipal buildings, things of this nature, then it's going to catch up with you. And so, I think Mayor Vandergrift certainly set the tone to bring people in. I think S.J. Stovall and I did a fairly good job of concentrating on the infrastructure, water, sewer, streets. In fact, I doubled the streets allotment during my mayorship because of trying to take care of the people that's already here, so that in turn that they would help attract their friends and other businesses to our city.
Did you ever have any serious opposition when you ran for council? Any real serious opposition?
Well, you never know. Jerry Pikulinski ran against me one year, and Jerry was a real fine, and is a real fine young man, and done a good job. In fact, I believe you'll go back and check the boxes. He won one box. That was the box he lived in. But he did better than my other opponents. I never lost a box in Arlington, Texas, except to Jerry Pikulinski, and I lost his box. But the one year, and I'm trying to think, you're going to have to help me because he worked over there. Well,
I can look it up, of course. I have never looked up.
Yeah, he was a professor at UTA, and the girl that our flag, who is Betsy Ross.
Suzanne Ross.
Suzanne Ross, and you're a friend of our attorney, and the guy that worked for Nationwide, Vernon Hodo. All three of them decided that if all three ran against me at the same time, and they did. And
but Jerry Pikulinski was probably the main opponent that you had.
I'd say Jerry, had Jerry beat me, he would have made a good council person. He really was. He still is a fine young man. I can't say too much about the three I just mentioned, but.
And when you ran for mayor, though, the first time you ran for mayor, you had opposition from Gary Broomer.
No.
Or not? It was not from Gary Broomer.
No, that was from this Dan Leach. This party. They was running. Their top man was running for president of the United States, and I can't.
The Lyndon LaRouche people.
Dan Leach was one of those. And
so he was a LaRouche candidate.
Yes, that's correct. But he did not run a strong race at all. And then, like I say, the other races was never those three ran against me. Of course, hoping to split the vote to get me in a runoff. They did not accomplish that.
And then the second time you ran for mayor, though, you did have opposition.
Yes, Gary Broomer ran against me the second time. And he was the mayor pro tem.
And was that a pretty tough? That was a pretty tough race, as I understand it.
Well, not really, Alan. Gary's a fine young man, but I beat him 60-40, and I don't consider that a real close race. But you know, in that particular instance. Like I say, Gary's a real fine young man, but he didn't really play completely square with me and the other members of the council, but you know, that's something that he has to deal with, and I don't.
Gary Brewer is now, lives in another city, I think, I'm not sure.
Yes, he does. I think in North Richland Hills or something like that. In fact, he's the chairman or something of the Republican Party. Over there.
What were the main issues in that race? Do you remember when he ran against you?
One of the things that he used to attack me with, and which, of course, I just spoke to a few minutes ago here, was the fact that I had not brought any industry into the city. And I don't know that I went out and solicited those because the Chamber of Commerce was active. And of course we had sufficient people coming in. But we were working on the convention center and other things, and these articles in the paper will speak to those. But I spoke to the fact of infrastructure, as I stated a while ago.
And you doubled the money for streets during your term as mayor?
Yes. And I also, we got AA bond rating while I was mayor. And, you know, I'm proud of that. In fact, an article here, I spoke to that, Alan. I think that whatever I accomplished, you know, we did it together as a mayor and council. And on the bond rating, so that I continued going up there with Mayor Stovall, that we were entitled to AA bonds. And just like I told the people up there, Moody's, and a guy by the name of Ben Phillips. In fact, I was Mayor Pro Tem and Mayor Stovall was mayor. And Ben Phillips and I with Moody's got in a real strong argument. And the basis, the logic that I used on him, Alan, was the fact that Arlington, back then even, was one of the very few cities that was producing sufficient sales tax that almost was the equivalent of our ad valorem tax. And a lot of these cities that had AA bonds didn't have that sales tax volume. They had to rely on ad valorem tax. So the argument I used on Mr. Phillips was the fact that, Ben, look, I'm in the banking business. Let's make it like you're in the banking business. And we had two people come in, both of them was making $100,000. But this guy just had one job that made $100,000. This guy over here had two jobs making $50,000 apiece. Which one would you loan the money to? And he said, which one would you? I said, well, the 50, because if they lose this job, they still maybe can service the debt with this 50. If this guy loses his $100,000, that's the same thing you're looking at, Ben. on this $100,000 or on this tax deal.
Just another source of income.
We just have another source of income that can retire, and our spread. See, we're at 63 cents now. See, we can go to $1.50, and back then it was in the 40s, 50s, and I said, look at how much we can increase our ad valorem tax if we had to. We don't have to because we've got sales tax coming in to feed the coffers. And his question to me was, Mr. Patterson, if you're up for re-election this coming year, is that correct? I said, yes, sir, it is. He said, would you go back and vote for a tax increase right in front of your election? I said, if you'll tell me that you'll give me AA bond rating, I will. Okay. He said, I'm not going to tell you that. I said, well, I'll still vote for the tax increase if we need it. And so we came back, and I did, and went back the next time as mayor, not mayor pro tem. And
you got the AA bond rating.
And I got the AA bond rating.
That's an important thing, wasn't it? Because I remember Arlington's bond rating was hurt during the entertainment problems that the city had.
Well, I think it's very important, Allan, because we fought for it, got it, and
is AA the top rating?
Oh no,
AAA is the top rating.
But AA is good, and I like to collect it because I don't like to pay it, and I don't think our taxpayers like to pay it. But to expand upon that, I think Mayor Green and the council have refinanced our bonds and things of this nature, done a tremendous job at it. So, I think our leadership is good, has been good, personally, but I'm sort of biased, of course, in the fact that Mayor Stovall, I love the guy, I love Tom Bannigrip, love Mayor Green, and then I tried to hold up my end while I was in there, making sure that the taxpayer got a fair shake.
That was an important milestone to get the bond rating back up, because the bond rating had slipped, didn't it, during the 70s, I think?
Yeah, well, part of it
Part of it slipped,
right. And out of the, and I don't recall exactly, but a secondary market had slipped, I think, and not really. We just couldn't get it from a A+ up to AA.
And then, after you served out your second term as mayor, you decided not to run again.
That's correct.
Was there any particular reason, or?
Well, it's, and I don't even know whether we should print this or not, but Mr. Bruner had told some of the local people here that if I would give him a letter stating that I would not run again, that he wouldn't run against me, and that I would support him. And
to run for mayor?
Yes, to run for mayor. I would not do that. In fact, Howard Wallman had called me and asked me if I would do that, and I told Howard that I wouldn't give Gary Bruner, the time of day, but if Howard and another group of my supporters wanted it, I would give that letter. But the reason I didn't want to give it, and we're getting back to Paul Yarbrough now, whenever the first year that I ran for mayor, word came to me that Paul Yarbrough was going to file against me.
The first time for mayor?
Whenever I ran for mayor the first time. And so Paul and I also went to high school together, played football together. And I thought an awful lot of Paul, still do. Of course, he's deceased now. But anyway, I called Paul. And I said, Paul, I've already announced I didn't realize you wanted to be mayor. Are you going to run against me? And he laughed. And he said, well, I'd given it some thought, Harold, but he said, I'm not going to run against you. He said, we've been friends too long. And I said, well, that's good, Paul, but let me make a deal with you. This is my right hand raised. I said, let me go ahead and run, and hopefully you'll support me. If you have to get in, I'll understand. We'll just run the best races we can, and the winner, takes it. But I said, let me make you a deal, Paul. I said, you stay out of it this time. Support me. I'll give you my word of honor at the end of 2 years if I'm elected mayor. I will not run again, and I'll support you for mayor. He said, that's a deal. So when my 2 years came up, I called Paul. And I said, Paul, are you ready to run? Because I said, I gave you my word. And if you want to run, I'm not going to announce, and I'll support you. And he said, laugh, he's on Harold. He said, I don't want to be no politician. He said, you go ahead and run.
This is for second term?
Yes, this is for my second term. And so, of course, word had gotten to me that Gary Bruner was going to run against me.
Second term.
My second term. And I called him in to ask him. He denied it. In fact, Mayor Green, I asked Mayor Green if he'd check with him. I asked Dan Phillips if he'd check with him, and he told Richard Green, Dan Phillips, Paul Wharton, that he was not going to run against me.
But he did.
Well, it was real funny because the Star Telegram.
He was on the council at the time.
Oh, yeah, he was Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah.
And the Star Telegram called me and said, we understand that Mayor Pro Tem Bruner is going to run against you this year. And I said, no, we just checked with him. And I said, Mr. Green has checked with him, Dan Phillips has checked with him, Paul Wharton has checked with him, and he has assured me and them that he's not going to run. The very next morning, out at Ramada Inn, he had a meeting with his political flags and banners hanging on the wall, and he announced the very next day that he was going to run against me.
So you decided not to run for the second term
until Paul Yarborough said he wasn't going to run.
Going to run. Oh, I mean, I'm sorry. After your second term was completed,
oh yes,
you decided not to run.
Yes, in fact, my wife and I have. She's been such a tremendous asset, and she's never said no to me. And she has a sort of like Allan Saxe. In fact, she's real proud of you. But I've been married to her 46 years, beg your pardon, and I've never heard that woman say one thing in anger. So that tells you the type of person she is. And we were sitting on the back porch. This was after I had won the last race.
The second term race.
The second term race. And we sat on the back porch there and just talking. And she said, you know, honey, don't you think we've had enough politics after we finish this 2 years? That's all it took. Because that was her nice way of saying, you know, I think we should not stay involved in politics any longer. Because, you know, when these people that you love and they love you, you need to be very considerate. And she was putting in, you know, time just like every other spouse that has a spouse in politics.
And that was pretty much the deciding factor.
That was it.
That was it. After that.
That was it. Whenever she expressed her view that, you know, she didn't tell me I shouldn't run, but she said, don't you think after this that we've served sufficient time? And I said, honey, I sure do. So,
except for 1 year, you had been on the council or as mayor from 1966 through 1987, with the exception of 1 year.
1 year. That's correct.
And then go back to if it's okay, the Councilman Bruner said to you at the end of the second term that if you would write him a letter saying
it's in the first term.
In the first term, I'm sorry.
Okay.
That
he was preparing to run against me. In fact, he would not run against me if I would give him a letter stating that I would not run again for the third term and that I would support him, in which I refused to do it.
And then he ran against you the second term because of that. So.
Yes, because I supposedly would not give him that letter.
That's interesting. Yeah. Were there any other moments, either as mayor or as council, that you think were very important or defining moments or anything? But
no, most of it, of course, and as these articles will tell you, I simply felt like that there was too many apartments in Arlington, and in fact, these articles speak to it, I made an extreme effort to influence my fellow council people and the P&Z not to rezone any additional land into apartments. We didn't talk about downzoning or anything of that nature, but we talked about not zoning any more land for apartments, and I think that was a wise thing.
And that would have had to have been what, just raw land or farmland?
Yes. Originally, an original land plan, Allan, which I still think was good, that we all agreed that all that property between Arkansas Lane and 303 and east of 157 on Matlock Road be zoned apartments. And we pretty well held firm to that for a long period of time. And that's pretty well where most of the apartments developed in that strip, because we had a major road on either side to get them in and out in volume, And of course, since that time, it's expanded. But I think back, and these articles will speak to it, that we tried to control the density of apartments, particularly to the point that we had them placed at major highways or roads, arteries, for the flow of traffic to be agreeable.
Even though Arlington's apartments have always been a point of controversy, it seems that it still has allowed the town to grow, brought people in, allowed people to come in.
Yes. Well, I think the argument, Allan, and it's a good argument, it's just like my son and my daughter. I was born and raised here. My son and daughter, of course, were born and all being raised here, and my grandkids. But whenever they first get married, they've got to live someplace. They don't have the money to buy a home or even a small one whenever they first get married, so they have to have a place to live. So we took that under consideration and advisement, and cussed and discussed it, and so there's nothing wrong with apartments. And of course, I disagree with those people out there that say that they don't pay taxes. They do. They pay in their rent and lease monies and their water bills. So don't, I've had quite a few, and you've heard quite a few politicians say, well, those people don't pay taxes.
No, they do. Sure.
They just don't get a chance to deduct it off their income tax like you and I do that have homes. So they do pay taxes, and they're good people, a lot of them, and just like anything else, majority. But I think apartments, particularly, I don't have anything against them, except I think they create tremendous burden if you're not careful on our school systems. I think they create tremendous burden on our welfare system, because they're going to attract low-income people. And if you do that, then you're going to have to make arrangements. And I think that Arlington has been great. I know the Arlington Boys Club, which I helped initiate back many years ago, I think they've played a major role in picking it up. The YMCA and the Office Club, Allan, I take my head off of them just about every day. Not every day, certainly every week, because they're supervising their young people in a great fashion. So.
And then one other final question. While you were mayor or on the council, was there any attempt to, I'm phrasing it awkwardly, to recruit people for the council as you were recruited, or ask if you saw somebody that you felt would be a good candidate for the council? Would the council go out and approach them as you were approached in an earlier age? Or?
I don't think we ever did it in mass. But I know that I've gone with other members of the council to somebody that we knew loved Arlington, we knew were good Christian people, knew that had some business savvy, and
but nothing like in mass as you were recruited. It was a different age.
No.
But you would go see somebody, one or two councilmen
Oh,
together.
yes,
would
yes.
you?
And I agree with that, Alan. I tell you what, I think whenever you take people, well, like you said, you're highly educated, you're knowledgeable in city and government. I disagree putting somebody on the council, and this sounds bad, but I don't mean it to be bad. Whenever you send people up to Moody's and Standard & Poor's up there, I don't care what city manager you have and how good he is. We've had some good ones. We've got a good one. But whenever you're talking to Standard & Poor's and Moody's, they're wanting to talk to somebody that's a mayor, mayor pro tem, council members. And it's just like, I'll tell you a story on Charlie Deal. Charlie Deal wanted to go with me to New York. And I said, you bet, Charlie. And he said, well, I don't know whether they'll listen to me. And I said, Charlie, you're wrong. I said, they will listen to you. For several reasons. Number one, all that white hair you don't and your personality. And Charlie had a great way of coming across. So anyway, he went up there, and you could tell he was nervous whenever they'd ask him a question. But I had more confidence coming from Dun & Bradstreet.
Oh, he's a wonderful man.
And they say, Mr. Patterson, Mayor Patterson said that he's a tremendous asset to you on the council. And I think he sure is. They said, we can take him, and those people up there, Alan, whenever you go, those big investor banks, they know as much about Arlington, if not more, than you and I do right now. We lived here. I've lived here all my life as a mayor. But I sit up there around the table with them, and I know one particular time, somebody asked me, how many acres of undeveloped land did Arlington have? If anybody had ever told me, I didn't recall.
But they could tell you.
Well, this guy from Chase Manhattan Bank said, just on my right. Oh, he said, called him by name. Said, that's an easy question. Said, I figured you'd know that. He gave him the answer.
The exact answer.
I told him after the fact, I said, you saved my life. He said, I knew it. He said, you was popping those answers out there real quick. He said, never you hesitated. He said, I knew that's one you didn't have the answer to.
Yeah, I doubt if anybody would know that now, But
So, anyway, he carried it off real smooth by saying, hey, Joe, here's the answer. And I thought we all knew that. It got me off the hook. But
well, I really appreciate, for one, everything you've done for the city as mayor and as council and what you're doing now. I appreciate it very much.
Well, thank you, Alan. I love Arlington very, very much. And I love the people. I love Arlington very much. And just like my wife and I were talking, I'm a tax consultant now. You want to take that off?
Well, yeah.